Welcome to Retire Repurposed. Today, Taatjes kicks off a special series examining the vital difference between retiring and being repurposed. Join us as we challenge traditional retirement thinking and explore a more fulfilling path forward. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Jared Sebesta joining you on yet another episode of Retire Repurposed here. Hope you're having a great day, a great week, a great 2025 here so far. We've been spending some time here the last couple of weeks really diving into how do you have a big year? Like, how do retirees have the best year, the most expansive year, the year of most growth? And I think right away, maybe if you're new to the show, you may think like that's kind of a different concept, a different way to look at retirement, where retirement really is now a time where it's not about growing. It's about maintaining. It's about just leisure and the status quo, and now it's more about really off time and vacation time. And while there's nothing wrong with those things, certainly, we spend a lot of time on this particular show talking about what is the true essence of your retirement and how can it be the biggest, most expansive year or season of your life. So if you're new to the show, welcome. You're going to hear a different conversation regarding retirement, and we're going to talk about another show where we really kind of at the essence do some myth busting versus what society says retirement's all about, what you've been conditioned to think about and live out your retirement versus what it actually is or could be. So again, if you're new to the show, welcome. If you are not new to the show, welcome back to another episode here today. Taatjes joins me on the show now, and we talked about a really interesting concept last week where we dissected two of some of your favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis, but I think this really got the conversation going into a really powerful message that really there's something more out there than a lot of people expect, not only for this year, but for their retirement in general.
Yeah, Jared, and I think, those two quotes, some of my favorites, certainly C.S. Lewis, great author and so significant in what he's taught me. And in fact, right now I'm going through, Hillsdale College has a free education. It's amazing, some of the courses they have, and these are amazing courses that anybody can take. So I encourage you to go there and check it out. There is one on there about C.S. Lewis's life and how important he is to the Christian faith and kind of his journey. So I'd encourage people to go out and listen to that. But the one quote that I quoted last time was C.S. Lewis says, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." And of course, for retirees, I believe that. I believe that a lot of times society says, "Yeah, you're too old, move out of the way, let the younger people, run the show." So I don't certainly believe that. I think I've seen enough really successful retirees doing so much in their communities and certainly in their families. And then the other quote was the C.S. Lewis, "Aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you will get neither." And that is still my favorite. Yeah. I mean, that quote, when you look at whether you're retirement age or you are in middle age or you're a kid, when you aim at heaven, you will get everything you're looking for here on earth. And sometimes, we tend to focus too much on ourselves, right? And that would be aiming at earth, right? And our earthly desires. And I know in my life, that's when things go off the rails. When I do tend to aim for heaven and I have this desire to live more like Jesus, to look at how he lived, right? And came from the ultimate servant mentality, died for us. Yeah. That's when I tend to say, yeah, I'm living closer to that, and then the earthly things come as well. The success, the happiness, the contentment, all those things that I think we all want come as a result.
Yeah, I want to get into today's show because we're going to have a really spirited conversation about really what retirement versus being repurposed is all about. But I think what you're suggesting is, and the crux of last week's show is really that you are living a life that is in alignment to who you were created to be. And you're really living a very, very powerful, I would even say like a supernatural life. And I think that no matter what age you are, that should be the case. There's no reason why regardless of the season you're in. It shouldn't look like that. And so I really resonated with last week's show, because that's the life that I try to live and try to inspire other people to live in as well. And what a powerful message for retirees.
Yeah, and I'm not doing it today. I mean, I'm doing better. That's the goal, right? To always try to grow closer to our Creator, to become more in tune with His will for our life. But it is not easy. We all screw up. Man, I've messed up a lot. And that's what I just hope people hear from this is, no matter what stage you're at, where you're at in your faith journey, where you're at in your career, you are trying to live more in this servant mindset, and getting to a place that you think through those things. I've seen it. I've seen it in my own life when I put others' needs first, and I listen to what God is trying to do in my life. Man, things, the earthly things, the things that actually a lot of us strive for first, tend to come and fall into place.
Yeah. It's a really great perspective on how to live, especially for retirees that are listening to the show and perhaps new to the show. So again, if you missed last week's episode, please go back and listen to that. Find us on your favorite podcasting platform, subscribe, like, share, do all the things, but make sure you get back. And it's a great segue and a great way to open up 2025, regardless of where you are in your life and your retirement. Ben, let's talk about today's show. We're going to kind of go back we're not going back to the archives, but we're going to go back to a very, kind of foundational message that started early in this journey of developing this platform. But you really want to start kind of dissecting this difference and debunking the difference between what it means to be retired versus being repurposed. Where and how do you want to start this conversation?
Yeah, so I've got in the workbook that we created 5 years or so ago, we have this list of descriptors of a retiree, and we correspond that with those that we see as living the repurposed retirement. So let's start at the beginning, because I think that's such an important one. And under the column retired, we say withdrawn. And for a retiree, the typical retiree that, again, is struggling probably more so with retirement than what they thought, they tend to be a little more isolated and begin disengaging from those around me. Okay. On the other column, repurposed, we say they're engaged. So they are looking for opportunities to connect with my family and my community. And you think about those two words, right? Withdrawn or engaged. There is a massive difference there. And I believe we start on purpose with this one, because one of the scariest things and one of the most detrimental things to a retiree's happiness and contentment in retirement is becoming more isolated. Yeah. Without a doubt, yes, we got to have purpose. We've got to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. But if we're isolated and we're on our own, you start thinking more and more about your own needs and your own problems. And again, getting back to this last show, like if you're only focused on yourself and you're caught in that place, you will be very unfulfilled. And then the problems that you have get bigger, and they get bigger and they get bigger. And pretty soon that's all you're worried about and consumed with when you're isolated. When you disengage, it becomes more about you.
Do you think that people don't understand that a natural byproduct of perhaps leaving their job or career is kind of to be withdrawn? Here's another way to look at it. I don't think any retirees like, you know what, I'm going to retire next week, and I really am striving to really isolate and disconnect with people. Like it's not something people strive for. It just kind of happens. Is that because there's a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding, not fully understanding exactly what's ahead for them? Like how would you answer that?
I think it starts with not understanding how much community they had from the workplace, right? So the workplace provides us with, let's call it 8 hours a day, usually minimum, where you are in community. You're either serving clients, you're working with team members, you're building something and creating something that you're then showing to somebody. You are working on teams, so many things. It's really hard. One of the reasons I think people are struggling more and more with work from home even these days is it's really difficult to feel part of a team. It's really easy to become isolated. So I don't think generally people see that as like a goal. They're not saying, I want to be isolated. I think some time away is great to figure out your life a little bit clearer and the next stage of life. But certainly, it's not a goal. It's just kind of a byproduct of not realizing how important work was in order to keeping you in community with others.
So what should people do if somebody's getting close to the end, maybe 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road of retirement? What's something that people can do so they are more aware of this?
We have to take accounting of those relationships, right, and replace them. Realize it's not going to stay the same. We've seen that many times in our work where somebody's like, I'm just going to go back and have coffee time with the guys. And they never do. It does not work because nobody wants to hear about your newfound extra time on your hands. They're still in the middle of their own cases, and they're still in the middle of their own projects at work. So again, you have to take an accounting, make a specific, make sure you're aware, right? The awareness, and then come up with a plan and look for being engaged. That second half of this is looking for opportunities to connect. That may require work on your part as a new retiree, certainly more than when you were working, because now it just doesn't come naturally because of your day. So you may get up and spend very little time with others and find yourself, no, I have to work at keeping people, whether that be family, but certainly other community members in my life. So it will take work.
Yeah. I think that intentionality comes back to mind here, where it just will not happen if you don't intentionally try to get engaged. That engagement doesn't just show up at your doorstep, literally and figuratively, when it comes to this. Any other comments on this one before we move on?
No, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Jared, I think the next one ties so well into like our last podcast about dreaming a new dream and trying to grow, like C.S. Lewis talked about. The first word under the retired column is maintaining. And that person, that retiree, is okay with staying the same and actually therefore slowly moves backwards. But if I'm growing, that's the repurposed descriptor. So growing means I'm constantly learning and reflecting on experiences.
Big contrast there.
Big contrast. So somebody who is just thinking, I'm just going to hopefully stay the same, always goes backwards. Nothing good comes downhill. Like everything that you're striving to hold on to and all the hard work, it will take effort to just stay where you're at. So you should set a goal. You should try to do just a little bit more. Indirectly, you might end up maintaining, but that's your goal, is you now to be growing. Kind
of like with withdrawn. I don't think anybody says, I'm going to retire next year and I'm really going to just kind of maintain. Like nobody's ever said that. I can't imagine they've ever verbalized that. Again, this one kind of seems like it's kind of a byproduct again. If you do retirement the way that we just kind of typically do it, that will be your baseline unless you take some intentional action for it, right?
Yeah, it's going to take you consistently and constantly looking at things that you can learn and looking at areas that you can grow in order to not stay the same.
Right.
We tend to get in, I know I do it in my own life, I get in a rut and I kind of I'm just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
So dangerous, I think, if you look at mixing things up a little bit in your life. I think retirees need to do that. I shared this, I've shared this over many times with clients, but in Japan, if you go to a park and you look around at what, how people are spending their time in that park, it's not uncommon to see people walking backwards. And the reason they're doing that is it is a complete change to the normal routine of walking forward. It keeps your mind sharp. It's like, let's mix it up a little bit. I find that so interesting. Certainly don't just try that in the States on a busy street because you'll get run over.
Right.
But the point there is be open to new things. Be trying new things. You don't even know some of the things that God has put inside of you that you could be even really talented at.
Sure.
Spend that time of retirement, that newfound time, not just saying, I'm going to keep doing my same old thing, but try new things, and you'd be shocked how many things are out there that you might just enjoy.
The question I'm getting better at posing to myself, especially this time of the year, and something I encourage other people to do in all areas of their life, whether it's going really well, maybe it's not going well, maybe it's just going okay, is to always ask, what else is there? What else is possible? If you're truly connected to God, there will always be more. And again, that's not because you're inadequate. It's because he is so abundant and infinite that there's always more for you if you are willing and available to be open to that and to receive that. And, let's dissect this just a little bit more. Growing. Do you mean like, and I'm sure that all inclusive, but like reading a book, trying new hobbies, being open for more, mindset? Like what comes to mind when you look at growing in what areas specifically, and how could people actually take action to take on more of a growth type mentality?
Well, I'd start, Jared, by looking at the time, my newfound time, and making sure it doesn't fill in with,
filler.
Yeah, which tends to look like for many retirees more TV.
Right.
I would track that.
Yeah,
I would say, how much scrolling am I doing on certain social media? How much TV am I watching? And start inventorying your time, coming up with a daily plan. We've had entire shows on our podcast about where people spend most of their time in retirement. Unfortunately, I think the statistics show that of that 8 hours a day that you get back when you retire, more than half of it is burned by watching TV. It was considerably more than that. We'll just say half or more. Well, that's not a great place to start, right? So TV is just, I'm not saying there's no place for it, but because I've watched some TV as well. But I mean, I just think if you're filling time and you're maintaining, you're just kind of, I think that's a very dangerous thing. So I would start with laying out a schedule. Like, here's a time I'm getting up. Put the boundaries around your day. Here's a time getting up. Here's generally a time going to bed. Because remember, work's not there to do that for you anymore.
Right.
You don't have to get to work at 8 o'clock. So set the boundaries, set your schedule, and then make sure you're engineering your day to have certain periods where you're growing. You're like, I'm not going to do things just like yesterday. I'm going to get out there and do something totally different. And the mindset needs to be growth versus just maintaining.
Yeah. Well, going back to last week's show too, if you don't have the desire to grow, ask God to give you the desire to even have the desire, because that's something that he can work with. But I do like what you said, because it goes back to really stewarding your time, talent, and treasure. And I think if you can be intentional with your time, and even just take a fraction of that 8 hours of your day and dedicate it to growing in some area. And again, that could be as simple as reading, meditating, going for a walk, trying to be more active, connecting more with your spouse, children, adding value. I mean, there's a plethora of ways that you can be growing. And what I have seen is that the more growth I try to achieve, it becomes a little contagious. Like, you're like, oh, okay, like this feels good and I want more of that. Have you seen that with retirees?
Yeah, I have. I've seen people that start to kind of see more of what God can do with them,
right,
as they slowly say yes. They say yes, they say yes, they grow. Yeah, there's some roadblocks, and there's some certainly times when they're like, man, that was not for me. But for the most part, when people are open and they're listening to what God's telling them, and God's not going to say sit around, do nothing. He's going to tell you, you need to get out there. You need to stay active. You need to grow in your faith. You need to grow in community. All these things that we know are so important for people, absolutely. I think more important than ever as you age. Learning, right? I mean, that is... Man, your brain is capable of so much more. People in their 60s have done amazing things.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many examples of that. Google it. Say people in their 60s that have changed the world, and you will come up with a ton of just motivation there.
Yeah. Again, going back to last week's episode, or maybe the episode before that, it was like double down on these things. Especially if you don't have the desire to maybe serve more, take inventory of your time, double down on actually doing it, and watch what happens to your desire. Your desire will actually go up, and you will start to receive the desire that you want, and thus your impact will go up, and then you will be growing. You know what I mean? It's a really interesting concept. If you can really, if you're open and available to receiving it, it's a really, really powerful concept. We're going to end up doing a part 2 on this. We're not going to get through the full list here today, but let's get through through session number 3.
Yeah, the next word actually ties really well, Jared, because it does tie back to time. So a retired person is just passing time, and they find things to occupy my time but don't get much accomplished. Whereas a repurposed retiree is purposeful, and they are intentional about finding and living a purpose-filled life. And that one, I mean, ties really well with what we just were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Taking inventory of your time. So many times I talk with a retiree, and I'll ask the question, you know, what'd you get done this week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, what day is it? You know, and there's something nice
Yeah.
and about that feeling of like, I'm not sure what day it is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when you have to think through and you have to challenge yourself to say, what did I get accomplished?
Yeah.
That over time is not a good solution. It's not a good situation to be in, where you are kind of trying to decide, what did I get accomplished? What did I do today? I kind of more just filled my time.
Yeah.
Back to the study on TV watching.
Yeah.
Back to those dreams that people have when they retire. Nobody says, I'm going to retire and I'm just going to pass my time by watching TV. But unfortunately, the studies show that more than half of the time is spent just being occupied by television, scrolling social media, all those other things that we know certainly doesn't grow you as a person, but actually many of them actually take away from you.
Yeah. It's interesting because I will ask retirees, and I'm sure you've done this. I'm sure you've done this in client meetings. First question, hey, how's it going? Or how you been? Oh, just staying busy. You ever get that? Like the staying busy?
Yeah, or you've said it before. Like I remember you were speaking at one of our events, and you say, hey, what's everybody got planned today? Nothing. Right? Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a badge of honor.
Right.
And I get it. There is something very good about rest.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about that one in next week's show about rest. But that can't be the goal, is I just got nothing planned. It feels so good.
Right.
That will feel good for a season,
sure,
but that will begin to age you really, really fast.
Yeah.
And that will begin to really cause a problem in your relationships and in your health too.
Yeah. I mean, the antithesis of a growth mindset is to really embrace doing nothing. I mean, that will accelerate you in the wrong direction. But to your point, thus just staying busy and passing time really isn't it either. If we go back to that study on labor and from labor statistics about how retirees spending their time, there was like the bulk of the 8 hours, to your point, was like, it was like 4.5 of the 8 hours we got back in our day was spent TV watching. I think the next biggest one was like household activities. And again, with all due respect, how many times is kind of the number one goal on the schedule today? You know, kind of fiddling around with the yard, doing some yard work, picking up sticks, which is great. Gives you activity, gets you outside, gives you a win. I'm not saying that that's not a good thing, but again, I see so many people of that age bracket where that's just kind of their number one go-to of time filler is that my landscaping is precise and my lawn looks really good. You know, I mean, kind of speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I call it putzing.
Right.
It's like I'm out putzing in the barn.
Yeah.
I've said that a lot of times to my wife already.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's not a good thing. What I tend to kind of, the litmus test for me is if like I'm out there putzing around or doing something.
Sure.
And yeah, it may be important to me, a hobby, and that's okay to have hobbies. Mm-hmm. But if I'm out there putzing around and my wife can come out there and not see anything different
right.
after me spending an entire day out there and I haven't accomplished anything, I haven't built something for somebody else, but I've only putzed around, and I've got to point out the things I accomplished. Number one, she's like, oh, who cares? What are you doing? What a wasted day. Number two, it's like I was selfish in that time. And there's a season, there's a time to go out and spend time alone and to recharge, and I get it. I still do that. But if that becomes too much of my time, and I go for a week or two, or what a retiree might think is going to fulfill them is just, again, passing time, you're not going to get things accomplished. I would much rather people look at it and be, I'm intentional Like, I am intentional about finding and living a purpose-filled life. And those purposes, Jared, if they're real purposes that are going to keep us, keep us happy and healthy, they involve serving others.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.